The fake news just doesn't get it, do they? Don't trust them. Do not trust them. They skew, they distort, they lie. And it's pretty funny, actually, when it happens, as well as being dangerous and undermining the country. I still watch those fake Sunday shows. Well, watch this. Just.
Oh, and I have to ask you, but before this hearing, you kicked off this first hearing, the Republican leadership held a press conference where they placed blame for the riot on Nancy Pelosi. I want to play you a sound from the conference chair, Elise Stefanik.
The American people deserve to know the truth that Nancy Pelosi bears responsibility as Speaker of the House for the tragedy that occurred on January 6th.
I mean, my God, they've protected Donald Trump from blame here, and they're blaming Nancy Pelosi for the fact that Trump supporters invaded the Capitol and including her office. Can you explain to me what they're talking about?
Oh, and Adam helpfully says, oh, this is totally mind-blowing. They're so desperate to change the narrative. And how about him? Oh, my God, he said. Oh, my God. Well, did you notice they let that Congresswoman speak for about 3.5 seconds? Okay, it was very, very short. I noticed that it was part of a much longer appearance. We found it. Here's what she said.
It is a fact that in December of 2020, Nancy Pelosi was made aware of potential security threats to the Capitol, and she failed to act. It is a fact that the U.S. Capitol Police raised concerns, and rather than providing them with the support and resources they needed and they deserved, she prioritized her partisan political optics over their safety. The American people deserve to know the truth that Nancy Pelosi bears responsibility as Speaker of the House for the tragedy that occurred on January 6th. And it was only after Republicans started asking these important questions that she refused to seat them.
Well, there's a little bit more context. Wow, Nancy Pelosi heard in December about potential security threats. The Capitol Police asked for more resources. Hey, let's investigate that. Not just be phony appalled by Stefanik laying blame at Nancy Pelosi. Why? Why? Wouldn't you want to know that? Doesn't the viewer deserve to know? So don't count on them. You can find this stuff for yourself, and we'll try to help. All right. Fake news favorite, the morning show over there on MSNBC, Morning Swamp, Morning Joe. Watch this, please.
There are more women and people of color running in local races in particular. And for the first time in history, Mika, a white man is not in serious contention to be the next mayor of Boston. And that matters because we're seeing from New York to Seattle to the Cleveland area in Ohio, multiple people and women of color jumping in the race to really establish themselves as the new face of the Democratic Party.
It's just wonderful that all these white men are gone. I watched the report. It didn't even occur to me. They were talking about the candidates. I didn't notice anything about, but she gleefully says, no white men. Isn't that interesting? This is Alexi McCammon, and believe me, she's trouble. Take a look at what she tweeted when she was a student at Northwest University, one of the most prestigious colleges in the country. A lot of anti-Asian nasty stuff. I mean, big time. This isn't ancient history. This is during the Obama administration. All right? I'm not going to read them. You can take a look at yourself. The stupid part, all right? There's another. Now, these tweets are problematic. Now, look, there are things we all wish we hadn't tweeted, but these tweets cost her a job at Vogue magazine, and she's still gleefully describing the absence of white men in a political race. I find that kind of odd. Also this on MSNBC, if you want to learn something about what's really happening on Capitol Hill, like what they're really discussing, how it might affect you, you'll be looking at the wrong channel if you watch these guys. Take a look.
They need to do a series of votes on amendments to this so-called substitute bill that is now the underlying bill since they actually have legislative text right now. That's going to be a late in the night vote-a-rama series, but it is non-binding. The Senate is pushing up against the August recess. That is something that senators value, and that tends to be a motivator. At this moment, it looks like the infrastructure bill and the budget resolution are going to pass. It's just a matter of when.
So You wouldn't learn anything about infrastructure in their report about infrastructure. It's all Washington gamesmanship, because politics, that's fun and that's easy to understand. Policy, and I'm guilty of this myself, it can be really hard, it can be very complex and boring. Yeah, it's true. But they pretend that they're substantive, that they are informing the American people. They are not. They're usually insulting the American people.
The Wall Street Journal reports Christians are more resistant to taking the vaccine than other major religious groups. That's according to newly released data from the Public Religion Research Institute. The study shows 24% of white evangelicals said in June they wouldn't be vaccinated. Vaccines are a part of our life here in America, and they help prolong life, and they help save life. And yet these Christians are refusing a vaccine?
These Christians, the condescending tone that she has about these Christians. And by the way, the numbers are all wrong, okay? Evangelicals are getting vaccinated like most people. There are certain groups, I won't mention them right now, that are significantly lagging. Why don't they talk about those groups? I wonder. Oh, here's some good news. And I always love it when America wins the gold, except this time. I'm actually quite pleased that the women's soccer team lost to Canada. They deserved to lose because of their antics, because of their woke antics and all the politicization of sports. I don't like it. I have a feeling you don't like it. All the kneeling. Do you remember when in the run-up to the Olympics, they actually wore Black Lives Matter sweatshirts? That's a bit much, all right? That's too much sports and politics and social justice. Just focus on the sports next time, ladies. What's her name? Megan Rapinoe with the pink hair. She was always talking about stuff that had nothing to do with her sport, and I think this is one of the reasons why we're created equal. But when you start talking about universal health care and the, you know, that's very political. It's off topic. She's not an expert. She's an expert in soccer. I recommend she focuses on that, including this individual, Ms. Saunders, who recently placed second in the shot put. Silver medal. Good for her. This is how she received the silver medal, making some sort of sign. She's going to explain to the Today Show what she was getting. I don't know. Woke politics, what does it make you, Mr. President?
Wokeism makes you lose, ruins your mind, and ruins you as a person. You become warped, you become demented.
Makes you lose. He's always right. I tell you. All right. The 2020 election. We have real concerns about the fairness of that election. It's okay to have concerns. This man has such concerns. He thinks that Trump won. You know, people are still investigating that, and he puts this flag out wherever he goes. This is at a ball game, I think a Texas Rangers game, and he unfurls this flag. Watch what happens next. Point there. They're calling the cops. There are a lot of people do crazy stuff at a ball game. People run out of the field, and then you call the cops. But this, you don't call the cops for that. I still have concerns about the election of 2020, and it's okay to have concerns, all right, about the fairness, and I think we should look into that, all right. The crowd was on the verge of going home, and then something happened. Flashbang grenades were thrown, possibly by police, into the middle of the crowd. That may have been what instigated so much of what came next, all right? Do you throw flash grenades into a crowd of people who are not rioting, who are just standing around? I don't think so. I'd like to know more. I'd like to see more, and not just hear from, sorry, a bunch of cops who have a political agenda. Those 4 police officers definitely had one last week, including Daniel Hodges. Now, you may have seen the picture of him wedged in that door. Now, I haven't gotten the full context of this, actually. It looks painful, but do we know everything? Do we know everything? Here's what he told us about that day.
The mob of terrorists were coordinating their efforts now, shouting heave, ho, as they synchronized, pushing their weight forward, crushing me further against the metal door frame. The man in front of me grabbed my baton that I still held in my hands, and in my current state, I was unable to retain my weapon. He bashed me in the head and face with it, rupturing my lip and adding additional injury to my skull. At this point, I knew I couldn't sustain much more damage and remain upright.
Wow. His head was bashed with a baton, his head and face, and his skull. That's serious stuff. That was January 6th, he said all that happened on. Here's a picture of him on January 15th, 9 days later. Something's not adding up. I'm sorry. His lip, his face, his head. And he's in uniform. He's back on duty. We all saw cops beat up corporate America and the media. These were voices that needed to be heard. Nobody, hardly anyone, stuck up for the cops. And now, why now? It brings me to Officer Fanone again.
The indifference shown to my colleagues is disgraceful.
Now, I hear this guy had a traumatic brain injury and a heart attack. Here he is on January 15th. Along with the other guy, he did interviews with the fake news all over the place. He's in uniform, and quite frankly, he looks fine. I'm not a cardiologist, but are you back on the job a week and 2 days later after a major heart attack?